Good morning, everyone. So obviously, I am here by myself again. We'll do some housekeeping here to start. But welcome to the 360 Sports Show. I am Christian Lawber. Pez obviously not with me today, so we'll have a little bit of a solo show for you. Lot to get to still. I want to touch on the NBA and the NHL the majority of the time today, just based on the events that have happened in the last couple of weeks here. Stanley Cup playoffs and obviously the NBA playoffs. But we'll hit on a number of things. Obviously, follow us, please, everywhere. Instagram, Twitter, 360 Sports Show, Gmail. You can email the show, whatever you want. We'll get to that mailbag from time to time here throughout the show. The 360 Sports Show at gmail.com. Same with the YouTube there tied to it. I'm trying to pump that up a little bit. And obviously, follow the show everywhere, Facebook as well. So, you can listen to us obviously live here every Sunday, 11 to we usually go about an hour to 2 hours, but anytime in there, as well as on the podcast side, any podcasting app you can find, we will be there, the 360 Sports Show. So with that out of the way, we'll go through some headline stuff here just to get started. Like I mentioned, I want to do a lot of NBA and NHL just based on where we're at in these Stanley Cup playoffs as well as the NBA playoffs. And I have some notes from Pez as well. But to get started, last week we left here, um, and the date was the 23rd of May, and the Masters was going on, or PGA Championship was going on with Phil Mickelson, and he is now the oldest player to win a championship at 50 years old. So we left here last week saying, he's got to hold on and hopefully he will. And he did. And obviously, Kepka had a meltdown of epic proportion, in my estimation, just based on uh, complaining and kind of bitching and moaning. And Phil went on to win the thing. So that was good for him. I'll start there. Just a few minutes on that, as Phil obviously he has his fair share of haters. He has his fair share of supporters. Um, and on the right side of that, I think this kind of gave golf some rooting interest. It was kind of cool to see a player like that who is 50, go on and win the thing, and be the oldest player ever to do it. So, just starting there in terms of there's some more buzz with golf when it's Tiger and when it's Phil and these guys, and it kind of creates more of a dynamic where people want to watch, and I think it's good for the sport, but also just in general, I think golf kind of needs that type of buzz because these young guys win one and then they're done. So for Phil to be in the conversation last week, creates more buzz, it creates more fan interest. For me personally, I like golf. Do I watch it every time out? No, because, there is not that buzz with the sport, but had a rooting interest last week. I tuned in to the end of it with Phil, on the cusp of winning the thing, and it was good for him, and I'll take any buzz I can get for if I'm golf in terms of we used to have Tiger and Phil go at it, and those two were down to the wire pretty much every tournament for a period of time there, for the majority of the time, and that just creates more interest. And so I think it's important for a guy like Phil to be in the conversation, and obviously to win it is even better. Um, there was a couple other things. I don't want to talk too much NFL, but Julio Jones um, is obviously a big one, and I just think, look, I think it's very important for teams around the NFL because a lot of these guys are kind of, I don't want to say they're like they wanna be traded. Like, it seems like Brady started something here in the NFL. And obviously, at the quarterback position, that's notable with Aaron Rodgers, and Russell Wilson had some reluctance to come back to the Seahawks there initially and kind of explored options to be traded, which is probably not gonna happen. But the interest is there for guys to kinda move on, and Julio Jones, not that he's forcing his way out, but he obviously wants to be traded. And that was proven with Shannon Sharp. He took a live show call with Julio Jones and, you know, try to get himself traded basically. But that being said, Julio cannot be traded till after June 1st. So the reason for that is because the Atlanta Falcons will save 15 million if they wait till that deadline. So I'd expect something here in the next week, and I'll give you a thought from Pez as well. He shot me a text real quick and mentioned it. He thinks he gets traded Tuesday. So Tuesday is obviously the first, and that would kind of track with what I was just saying that the Falcons are not going to trade him before that date, and that's why he hasn't moved yet. But a couple notable teams there. Obviously, I saw this morning the Rams and the Titans, those two, but also Patriots and the Ravens as well. So, and it could be another team as well, but those four primarily for Julio Jones have been mentioned off the top, and I would suspect he is traded this week. The Falcons obviously want to save that 15 million, so it won't happen today or tomorrow. I mean, look out. That could easily be the case that he's moved this week. And as we get closer, I mean, look, we're already in June here. So as we get closer to July, August timeframe, there's going to be some more movement in the NFL, I think. Maybe not big names, but Rodgers still is unsolved there. Jimmy Garoppolo could move potentially if the Niners don't want to pay him. I would suspect, based on Trey Lance, they will keep him, but another couple moves could happen here as we get closer. And Julio he's obviously a big name guy. I think that helps any team that picks him up. He's obviously a stud wide receiver. We know that. He's pretty durable other than this past, year and a half with the hamstring. And he'd make any team that trades for him, depending on obviously they don't want to give up too much, but you're giving up a second, maybe second, third, and something else. That's a pretty good get. And Julio can help any team. He can help any team that picks him up, and he's obviously a great player. I mean, we've seen that. He hasn't won the thing, but if Kyle Shanahan doesn't, kind of crap down his leg against the Patriots, he does get that catch along the sideline. Um, so he's got stones, and he can do a number of things. He can play a number of different spots on the field. He can play outside the numbers. He'll go across the middle, and just a great player overall. So any team that picks him up, you automatically, improve. Especially you're looking at the Rams now with Stafford. You have the Patriots here with Newton, obviously, or Mac Jones. Who knows who's starting there? The Titans a little bit. I don't know if the Titans have the pieces to kind of get a guy like Julio Jones at this time, but another interesting name and team to be on Julio's list, as well as the Ravens. So that would help the Ravens immensely. Can Lamar Jackson get it there? That would be my only question, but overall, Julio's gonna go somewhere and have a chance, presumably to be in the mix to win the thing. To get into the postseason, to win the division, to have a chance at maybe a title run. So any team that picks him up, they're gonna be in the mix just based on the names that we're hearing so far, with those top 4, at least as of now. Another team could come out and make a move like the Chargers or some team like that, but as of now, it's Pats, Ravens, Titans, Rams, maybe the Chargers, maybe a team like that comes out and tries to get him. But I would say, look, I think it's overall it's pretty important for him to be moved based on the Falcons, because I don't think at this point Falcons are in a tough spot. You want to get draft picks for Julio, and hopefully they will do that. But um yeah, so that's kind of like headline news. Pete from Gansett, what kind of reception should Will Tumberty get down when Tampa Bay comes to town? Well, you never know, right? Adam Vinatieri got booed, who retired. I'll mention that as well. But I would hope Patriots fans will cheer him, and give him the kind of applause, standing ovation, whatever you want to call it. He deserves that at this point. He won 6 titles here. And I mean, he was immensely important for the franchise. You wouldn't be where you are right now without Tom Brady. So anybody that goes to that game, I would imagine if I had to say, guess on what will happen, it's probably going to be a I would say it's a huge applause, obviously, maybe a few boos mixed in, but the boos will be drowned out mostly by, I would hope anyway, they will be drowned out by the applause. Um, Obviously fans can do whatever they want, but I wouldn't say, I mean, look, I'm not saying boo the guy. I don't think that would be the right approach, but they did boo Adam Vinatieri, who another guy, in my estimation, I would not boo. He was great for the Patriots. He was immensely important again in that initial run, that initial 10-year run. And ultimately, the Patriots didn't pay the guy. So what do you want him to do? So I'd be very surprised if Tom Brady gets overwhelmingly booed. It will be an applause of some sort, if I had to guess, and then drowned out by, the applause will drown out the boos, so you won't even notice it if there are any. Pats offering, Nick, I heard the Pats were offering a first, fourth, and Chase Winovich and Sonia for Julio. I don't know about that. That seems like a lot, but the I don't see the Patriots giving up a first round pick. That's the only thing. Um, would they do it? I just don't. I don't know if Belichick will do that. That's a lot to give up for Julio. I mean, he's a good player. Don't get me wrong, but do the Patriots need him that badly? I mean, what did Randy Moss go for back? He was a little bit older, I believe, but let me just look that up. That he got traded to the Patriots. What did they give up for him? Um, Fourth round draft choice. Yeah, I guess he was a lot older, but honestly, it's just Julio is a guy that I would give up maybe a second and like a later round pick, and then maybe a player. A Sony Michelle I would give up, but I don't think the Falcons really care for another running back. Colin, would you trade a Sanu second pick for and N'Keal Harry for Julio? Absolutely would do that. Yes. N'Keal Harry is the name that I've heard that's being brought up. I don't know what he has at this point, but a team might take a flyer on him. If you give up, a first, a second, and Nikhil for Julio Jones, I would do that if the opportunity presents itself. Um, but the problem is, do the Falcons want N'Keal Harry? Unless they see a spot for him, I'm not sure at this point what you get for a guy like N'Keal Harry. But if you're adding in a second or a first, and let's say like a fourth, fifth, sixth rounder, just as compensation in the later rounds, I would do it. I mean, look, I'm not tied to N'Keal Harry anymore. I didn't like the pick at the time. Um, I thought they needed a wide receiver, but obviously they chose the wrong one. So I'm not married to N'Keal Harry by any stretch. I would definitely give him up. It's just a matter of what for. And if Julio Jones is that guy, then absolutely I pull the trigger on that. Um, Again, I'm not sure any team's going to give up a first round pick, but maybe. I would imagine if it's the Patriots, it's not going to be a first. I would be shocked if they give up a first just based on their history. I don't think they give up those top end picks unless they have a chance to. I mean, is top end talent? Yes. But do they really see him putting them over the top for a first round pick? I'm not so sure of that. Um, the other guy I want to get to is Adam Vinatieri. We just mentioned him a little bit, but he has officially retired. And does he deserve to be in the NFL Hall of Fame, Patriots Hall of Fame? Those conversations are going to be brought up now. And the answer is yes to both. I think he's one of the greatest kickers of all time. Just based on what he does. You watch some of the highlights back in those snowball games where there's, how many inches of snow on the ground. Obviously, they cleared it off for the kicking spot, but kicking in that much snow, blizzard-like conditions, I mean, it's just nuts. So I would say overall, Adam Vinatieri is in the conversation for greatest kicker of all time, and he should be in not only the NFL Hall of Fame, the Patriots Hall of Fame. Uh, if they don't get him into the Patriots Hall of Fame, I'll be disappointed. I mean, I know they have these gripes with these guys that, want to get paid and want their money, but the guy had a lot left after he left here. So I'm not going to blame Adam Vinatieri for going to get paid. And especially, man, if the Patriots don't let him in, does he even recognize it at the NFL Hall of Fame? Because he's going to be in there, I would imagine. I can't imagine he will be left off the Hall of Fame ballot. So Does he go in as a Colt or a Patriot? Who knows? But it's an interesting conversation now that he's officially retired. Calling again with Ridley and Sharp there. There's no pressure for Harry to be their best receiver. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, and they got the young kid here, tight end. So, um, I just don't see the Patriots really giving up that first round pick if that's what the Falcons are looking for. If it's a second, absolutely you do it 100 times out of 100 times, just based on. I mean, you don't need N'Keal Harry. If you're the Patriots, you don't need N'Keal Harry now anyway. So you're upgrading already there with Julio and N'Keal. And then you have Kendrick Bourne, you have Jacoby Myers, and you have Nelson Aguilar. So they have enough receivers there to get rid of N'Keal Harry if needed. And I think it's needed. I mean, I think Harry is not he's not terrible, but for a first round pick, it just looks so bad. So any way you can get out of that, I would absolutely do it. Nick, again, I don't think the Pats can afford to trade a first rounder. We may need that. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, look, if you just look at the roster itself, I think all those young draft picks, that's how the team is kind of built. So the Patriots got lucky in a sense. The pandemic, um, the salary cap implications, I think they got a little bit lucky with how much they could spend this offseason. And in doing that, which is fine, but that's not really how teams are built in the NFL, right? So you got to build a little bit through the draft. You got to pay those guys in the young contracts. That's how you kind of keep your roster balanced. And in a few years, when those guys come off the books, they're going to need all the help they can get from the draft. So I just don't think you give up a first. It's got to be a second and maybe a fourth, maybe a fifth, and then a guy like Harry or Sony. If I'm the Falcons, I take Harry just because I feel like he's got more upside than the running back position, and he can block a little. He should be better than he is, but maybe they can get something out of him, and especially with Pitts, Ridley Sharp there, and then obviously Matt Ryan. They could do something with N'Keal Harry where they throw him in there and see what you got. Um, Now the other question is, the other teams have more. Do the Rams and Titans, Ravens, you name the team, do they have more to give up than N'Keal Harry? And I would say probably because N'Keal Harry kind of sucks at this stage anyway. So I don't know how you can go into that saying he's not a bust at this point, just based on where he was picked for the Patriots, especially with Metcalf and a number of wide receivers in that draft that went. But Metcalf is just the name that you look at. But I want to mention a couple things here first. I know there was a story about Naomi Osaka, tennis player, who skipped her post-match news conference at the French Open on Sunday. Um, I believe, if I have the details right, it was in coincidence with Mental Health Awareness Month. So if I can find it was basically to raise, mental health awareness. And I believe May is the month, but she decided not to talk in the press conference post her, I believe she won, um, because of, mental health awareness and look, she didn't want to. Let me see if I can find the story and just give you the exact quote of what her mindset was, but it's kind of one of those headlines that many people skip over, but I think just in terms of her, the story is not only, her doing it, but also you got to remember these guys and I will get to Kyrie Irving at some point in his comments this week because it's all kind of coincided here, but Osaka, raising awareness for mental health is important, I think, in the sports realm. I know we had DeMar DeRozan from the NBA. He is a big proponent of mental health and kind of bringing that to the forefront because these athletes kind of get, they get labeled as more of entertainers than people from time to time, just based on, well, us fans, we go out and we watch them, but you know, that's really what they do. They just entertain. They are high level athletes. Um, but they're also human beings as well, so it's just important to bring that into the conversation just based on what the athletes go through in terms of look, social media has brought a whole new level of hate and obviously on the other side of it, there's a lot of backing and love for athletes, in NEC, especially, places like Boston, New York. Um, but I think the mental health awareness is just an important one. So just wanted to mention that even just for a minute here, just because not only athletes, but just in general in the world right now, we're kind of coming out of that pandemic in the last year. So I think it's just an important conversation to have if, especially if for these athletes, they have huge platforms. So it's an important thing to mention. Um, but if you have any questions on anything so far, Phil or comments, Phil Mickelson, Osaka's comments, and her skipping that press conference to raise mental health, or the NFL, put them in the chat. We will get to them. But I want to go to kind of the main. Actually, you know what? We'll hit on baseball just for a minute. The Red Sox had a full capacity crowd yesterday. It was good to see. Um, just about everywhere, not only in baseball, but for baseball, I'll just mention the Red Sox really quick. They are 7-3 in their last 10, and they are half a game back, I believe, of the Rays now. So we're gonna get a baseball season. That doesn't mean, unfortunately, that they're gonna blow people away and be in the playoffs guaranteed, because the Rays are just on a tear, and the Yankees are also heating up as well. They've lost 2 in a row, but even so, in the last 10, they're 6-4. Um, so that's kind of just the update on the Red Sox anyway, just where they are in the standings. I mean, they've had a good year. 52 games in, they're 32-20. So you'd think you get a baseball season. They'll be in the wild card discussion as well. But overall, um, the Rays and the Yankees are going to be right there neck and neck here all the way through. And it's going to be down to the wire if you're a baseball fan, which I know many are probably not, but I still think it's a good message here. You check in at 50 games. I think that's a good measuring stick because there's too many games. Let's be honest. But we still have 112 games left, 110 games left. I don't even know at this point. But that is the status update for the Red Sox. They're in the mix, and they probably will be throughout. But they're gonna have some. They're gonna have a tough time in terms of blowing people away in that division, just based on the Blue Jays could come out and make some noise. The only one that's out of it is the Orioles, but outside of that, it's gonna be a close division all the way through. So, I without Andrew here today, it's kind of just me talking, but, I do wanna do a majority of the time here, whatever I have. We'll see how long I go, but the NHL and the NBA playoffs, are in full force. Obviously, the NBA first round is not as I don't wanna say compelling, but it's really not. There are a couple series that I'll talk about, but I do wanna hit on the Celtics, Kyrie Irving comments, Jaylen Brown comments. So we'll do that, and then the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs, obviously, as well. Um, so I'll just start with the NBA. I mean, I'll just start with the Bucks because they just swept the Heat. So they look like they're primed for a run, obviously, and they swept the Heat 4-0. It really wasn't. I mean, a couple games were close. Outside of that, it was all Bucks, and I think the Bucks and 76ers, along with maybe the Nets, but at this point in time, just based on what I've seen, personally, the Sixers and Bucks are in a prime spot to go to the Eastern Conference Finals, in my estimation. Because even if Brooklyn plays one of those 2 teams, I think I think it could go either way. It'll probably be a long series, but ultimately the Bucks and the Sixers right now seem like they're making prime runs. They're not playing obviously the best teams, but at the same time, Joel Embiid is the best player on the floor any given night, and Giannis the same thing. He's been very, very good so far. So unless those 2 guys are stopped, they should clash in the Eastern Conference Finals, for the NBA. So obviously, I'll just go right down the line here. Um, In terms of series, that one's over. The Bucks sweep the Heat. Philly is now up 3-0 after they blew out the Wizards last night by like 30. So they're up 3-0 in that series. That looks like it's going to be a sweep. The Hawks and Knicks, that's a compelling series in terms of there's a large crowd in New York that wants the Knicks to win. Unfortunately, I don't think the Knicks are that great, and not that the Hawks are, but Trae Young is a little bit better than I feel like anyone on the Knicks. Julius Randle has not played great for the Knicks, and he was their best player throughout the regular season. So that is a 2-1 uh, series right now for the Hawks. So the Hawks are up 2-1. That is in, I believe, Atlanta. One more game here, game 4, and then they go back to New York. So New York will get at least one more game. But I will say this: I think the Hawks should win that series just based from what I've seen in terms of I haven't watched the whole thing, but I caught a little bit of each game, and so far it looks like the Hawks are in a prime seat to take that series as well. Who knows what can happen? But then on the other side, a number of series. I'll mention the Celtics and Nets in a little bit because the game tonight should be insane if the Celtics want to show up and play. But on the other side, Lakers up 2-1 in their series against the Suns. Anthony Davis, LeBron James, obviously, we don't need much more than that. Those two guys are going to carry them. If they're going to win, the Lakers, LeBron is going to be LeBron. Blazers and Nuggets last night played, and the Blazers won that one. So 2-2 for that series. And then you move to the Jazz are up 2-1. And Dallas is up 2-1 after a loss to the Clippers the other night. Now, the only thing I have is Luka might be hurt. So that series could get interesting just based on that. And also Paul George, if he wants to play at an elite level like he did the other night, that series should be close. I hope Dallas wins it just because I think Luka is phenomenal to watch, and he kind of carries the load on that Mavericks team. They got some shooters, but he is really the guy to watch, and he's obviously just an absolute star in the league. So, I mean, I just going right down the line, the 2 series that I would watch if I was a fan right now is Dallas, obviously for Luka purposes, and then we'll see what happens tonight, but the Celtics-Knicks series could get interesting if the Celtics make some noise tonight. And that brings me to that series right now. So, Celtics-Knicks, 2-1. Surprisingly, I thought they were gonna get blown out. They were down 19-4 in game 3 at home. Only about 5,000 fans in the building, I believe, maybe even less. But they were down 19-4. They came back. Jason Tatum went on an absolute tear, and scored 50 points in that game. So that's what you're gonna need from Jason Tatum if the Celtics wanna do anything against the Nets, if they wanna do anything in the playoffs. It's gonna be Jason Tatum and on his shoulders. And then Kemba Walker, who, um, I'm hoping, you know, between the Nets, big 3, and Jason Tatum, obviously, there's a huge edge. You need Kemba Walker if you're the Celtics. So, I don't think the Celtics have enough ultimately to get through the series, but if there was ever a game to watch, it would be game 4. The Nets are on the road. We went from 5,000 on Friday night to 17,000 tonight, maybe a little bit over, and, um the Celtics, this is the game that you gotta get. They had a chance to steal game 1, I feel like, and, you know, game 3 comes across. Obviously, we had the Kyrie Irving, which I will mention in just a minute. I'm not gonna do too much on it just because I don't wanna get into it just based on Kyrie, but, um, look, I think coming into game 3, there was a lot of noise in terms of the basically, Kyrie Irving had a quote about, racism in Boston and, obviously, it's an issue. We all know it is. It's an issue probably everywhere, but that's not an excuse for Boston to be any different. But I will urge everyone to go listen to Jaylen Brown. He had the best quote in terms of response, I felt like, and I will just leave it at that. Obviously, from my standpoint, I know it's an issue. Um, It would be a little bit more back and forth here if Pez was here to just kind of bounce off. But in terms of the comments made by Irving going into game 3, listen to Jaylen Brown. I think he hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of work to be done, not only Boston, but around the world. Um, and I will leave it there. I think Jaylen Brown said it about as clear as day. He's obviously very engaged in that type of thing, which is important to use the platform like that. And I will leave it at that. Go listen to Jaylen Brown in response to not only Kyrie Irving, but just in general, about that in sports, in arenas, here in Boston. I think he did a phenomenal job in what he said. Um, I probably said Celtics Knicks, huh? But Celtics Nets, yeah. Pete from Kansas, how much of a difference do you think a full house at TD Garden will make? Uh, in my look, I think 5,000 made a difference the other night. So I just think the Celtics play much better at home. Maybe not record wise, based on fans weren't here earlier in the year, but when there's a packed house there, Celtics fans are pretty nuts. Even if the team is not supposed to win, they're not even that great. Um, they go crazy. So I think it's a huge difference. And this is really how you get back into the series if you're the Celtics. I think there's always a chance, not usually in the NBA, that anybody can beat anybody. But man, you talk about you're going from 5,000 on Friday, which I think it made a difference. I don't know how you say otherwise. I think it's hugely important. And then you go to 17,000 tonight. It should make a huge difference. Enormous if you're the Celtics. And I would suspect they come out and play well. I don't want to guarantee anything, but man, a full crowd like that, it's gonna kind of feel like the first time you ever played in front of a crowd if you're an NBA player tonight, just based on how many fans they've obviously been in Brooklyn, but if you're a Celtics player, oh, it's gonna feel like the first day all over again. Some of the Bruins were mentioning that last night, how crazy it was to kind of get a full house back in there, and I think it should make a huge difference. Now, the key is still Jason Tatum and Kemba Walker, but Tatum has to play great. I don't know if he's there yet. He's 23 years old, but the Celtics, in order to make some noise tonight, and if they go back to Brooklyn tied 2-2, that's huge, because you'll get one more in Boston. So it's a hugely important game tonight. I think if they lose tonight, obviously it's over. I don't think they win tonight, but they should play well. I think just based on the adrenaline, the crowd, that should keep you in it for a number of time, unless the Nets just absolutely go on a tear, which is completely possible. I think Durant is just an absolute all-world player, and he gets whatever he wants when he wants to. So he's really the guy that I look at. And then obviously Harden and Kyrie, they're not passengers, but also they're not the focal point. I think Durant is still the most important piece. Harden scored 39 the other night or something, but I felt like it was a quiet 39. He hit a few clutch threes that they needed. But overall, I thought Jason Tatum was just the story in that one. 50 points. He went shot for shot with a couple of guys, big shots when they needed it. But if you just look at the box score, what the Celtics need in key moments is Grant Williams played 11 minutes. He was a plus 15, 4 points, 3 rebounds, not much there, made a defensive play. That's what you need. You need 11-minute spurts off the bench. Same with Langford. I thought Langford was actually pretty good the other day. He was a plus 21. I believe that was the highest in the game. So 2 threes, they were both open shots. That's the type of thing that you need if you're the Celtics. You need those bench guys to come in and make a few open shots. And then Tatum has to play at an elite level. That's just the facts. But another important piece is Tatum has to go to the free throw line. That's the only real way the Celtics will make any noise in terms of keeping with the Nets, because the Nets will get fouls on almost every play. I mean, it's almost, insufferable to watch just based on the guys they have on their team and that group of players. But overall, I thought the Celtics played about as well as they can. That's Tristan Thompson playing well, Smart playing well, Fournier played well as well. And Kemba was up and down. Kemba's got to score more if the Celtics have any chance in this series. Prediction for tonight, I think the Nets win ultimately, but I will. I guess that remains to be seen. But I just think the Nets have too much firepower. And Pez sent me a text with some thoughts on the C's, but he wrote the main points just to get out there. C showed pride, still outmatched talent wise, but if Tatum can be Superman and someone else steps up, they can at least keep the series interesting and fun. And can't wait to see 17,000 at the Garden today. So, main point, obviously, they can keep the series close if they have other guys that are scoring besides Tatum. Tatum has to play. Does he have to get 50? No, but does he have to get like 30? A few assists and other guys have to score? Absolutely, I think, because just based on the firepower, you're looking at Durant, Kyrie, and Harden on the other side of the floor, and then it's just Tatum and Kemba, Smart. There's a lot less in terms of superstar talent on the Celtics. So quick prediction is I think the Nets ultimately win the series. They probably win tonight, but I think the adrenaline and everything keep the Celtics in it, and they at least make it interesting tonight. I would have to believe 17,000 in that place tonight. The place is going to be electric, so Celtics better come out and hopefully will play well in terms of just keep it close, keep it interesting. Maybe you get lucky and you win one. And then you go back 2-2. So who knows what can happen? But in any other league, I would say the NHL, what you name it, NHL, NFL, anybody can beat anybody. In the NBA, talent wins, unfortunately, most of the time, if not all the time. So I would have to believe the Nets come back out today and win. But I would still like to see it close, keep it interesting, play well, and you'll have a packed house there at the Garden tonight. So it should make a difference, and the Celtics should keep it close and hopefully do something in terms of, I don't know, maybe just even if they lose by single digits, I'll take it. Show some toughness, show some heart, keep it close, and just play your best. I mean, look, they have nothing to lose. They're the underdog in this thing. I don't think anybody expected them to win one game. Never mind, try to get two. So this is it. Just go play. That's really all you can do at this point if you're the Celtics. So to finish up here for me anyway, I want to go to the NHL a little bit. The Stanley Cup Playoffs this is the best time of year. You got NBA playoffs and NHL playoffs, the NFL rumors, everything. So I want to get to the NHL real quick here. The main series going on right now is, well, you have one first round series, right? But every other team is done. So Islanders and Bruins, the Bruins, opened last night. The Avalanche and Vegas Knights played tonight. The Jets are still awaiting the winner of Toronto and Montreal. Now, Montreal was down, I believe, 3-1, I want to say. Going into game 5, they won game 5. They won game 6 last night. So game 7 will be tomorrow for that series. And once again, the Toronto Maple Leafs, they can just not stop choking. So I don't know what to say about that team. They had a number of chances last night and they couldn't get it done. And turnover, and they lose that one. So Winnipeg is awaiting the winner of that one. And then in the other side here, the Canes and the Lightning. Somehow the Canes are the higher seed in that one. I don't know how that worked out. They're a pretty good team, but I just don't see anybody beating Tampa if Tampa's playing at an elite level and their best players are back. They somehow always manage to get their best players back when the playoffs start. It's kind of aggravating. But that's kind of a rundown right now. Now, second round, pretty much nothing has started yet except for the Boston Bruins and the Islanders. So that game was last night, game 1 in that series, and the Bruins won 5-2 in front of 17,000 again. So that's what I say. I mean, if you're a fan, you're watching the Celtics tonight in front of 17,000, you got to think it's going to make a difference just based on, I mean, the amount of electricity in that building last night for the Bruins Islanders was insane. A lot of people said it's the loudest they've ever heard it. So it was kind of like a coming out party here from the pandemic, and you know, mandates were lifted and guidelines were lifted. So hugely important for the Bruins, not only them, but also the fans just to get back in the building, get back on into the bars on that street, get business back up and running. And I'll just start with Pez's thoughts on this as well. Bees are rolling. Pasta getting his swag back in the playoffs, looking like the only thing that can stop them from making the cup final is themselves. Don't necessarily agree with that last part, just based on the Tampa Bay Lightning sitting there on the other side. Now they have to go through the Canes as well, and the Canes are good. So it's gonna be interesting to see. Long way to go in the playoffs. Long way to go in this series. They won game one, 5-2. I think Pasternak was about as good as he's been in the playoffs in a long time. Hat trick on the night, just an explosion in the crowd of hats and towels. Took about them. I want to see the longest cleanup from a hat trick in the playoffs or in the regular season in history. That might have been up there. It was like 10 minutes. It probably wasn't that long, but it felt like 10 minutes. And awesome to see. I mean, look, you have the crowd back. This is what it's all about. It's the playoffs. And I thought they played pretty well. They were a little shaky early on. The first line, I didn't expect them to dominate as much as they did, but Pasternak, Marchand, and Bergeron all were just phenomenal in this game. Now, being at home helps that because you have the last change. So Cassidy can kind of mix and match, Bergie and those guys for whoever on the Islanders. You can get him out there against whoever you want. And I think they kind of picked on the Barzal line a little bit, but also they picked on Josh Bailey, Pavillier, and Brock Nelson. Those guys were all -3, -2 in the game. So with last change is important, and it is good to see the matchups there in terms of who the Bruins are throwing out against. Not only Barzal, but also the other line. It seemed like Bergie and Marchand Pasternak were against Bailey, Nelson, and Pavillier all night, and it seemed to go well. I think that line absolutely dominated, as well as Krejci, Craig Smith for a period of time, and then Taylor Hall. That line also was very, very good. And again, last change means you have all the matchups. You can mix and match whoever you want, and it's important because I think in this series, both these arenas are going to be packed, and so home ice is going to be huge. Having home ice is huge, so you got to take care of business in game two. Same thing on home ice before you go to the island, and that place is rocking as well. So take care of home ice here, and you're in a good spot. But I think the Bruins. Did I learn anything last night that I didn't necessarily already know? Not really, I would say. I think this series is gonna be close. It's gonna be 6 or 7 games. Um, that's what I would have guessed off the top if these 2 teams met, and I'm gonna stick with that even after a 5-2 win. They got a couple late goals. McAvoy got the game winner technically to make it 3-2, but again, I think the key is that Bergie, Pasternak, Marchand line. Those guys have to play at an elite level. They did last night. I think they can do it every night. I felt like they had a lot of room to operate, especially in the offensive zone. I thought Bergeron was fantastic in his own zone as well. And then the other guys just got to play well. I thought overall the physicality it's lesser than Washington, lesser than against Washington, but still at a high level. And Coyle, Ritchie, and DeBrus, they got to be physical. They got to be in front of the net. Ritchie made a fantastic play in front of the net, just screening Sorokin. So those guys just got to come to play and play their game. I mean, that's really what Cassidy says as well. Just play within yourself. And I think Lazar, same with the fourth line. Lazar, Wagner, just be physical, get pucks in deep. And ultimately, I think the Bruins will do good things at those top two lines. I mean, it's just crazy to see the difference that Taylor Hall has made. You had obviously that number one line, but overall, you'd still say, well, the other lines are, mediocre. They're fine. They're pretty good. Taylor Hall came over, and I just think it's made a world of difference, just to spread things out. I mean, you have a guy. I thought Hall could have had, a hat trick himself last night with the amount of chances he had, and I thought he was very good again. Krejci, same thing. Craig Smith is hurt, so that could be a big loss, but someone will fill in there, and I still think Krejci Hall is just that duo has been dynamic since Hall got traded here. And ultimately, I think that has just made a huge difference. Not only that, but Mike Riley and Lazar as well. So they've changed all their lines, and the Islanders are still a very good team. So that being said, I think it's still going to be a close series. In my estimation, it's going to go 6 or 7, and it should be low scoring. Five, they had an empty net, so 4-2, 5-2. I don't think you'll see that every night. I'm looking at like 2-1, 3-2 for many of these games just because of the nature of the sport. Not only that, but the nature of the two teams is good in their own end. Um, and then you transition that into offense when you can. But again, the key for this series, I think if the Bergeron line gets the amount of chances they did last night in the rest of the series, the Islanders will have some trouble in terms of just kind of containing them because the amount of chances they scored just 3 goals. I wanna say Pastrnak was all 3, but the amount of chances in zone time, they really wore the Islanders down. Pulock and Pelech both got crunched along the boards a number of times, and I think the Bruins just keep it up. It was top 2 lines, kind of doing circles in the offensive zone, spending a lot of time there, and then on top of that, you have your 3rd and 4th line, the grinders, so to speak, play physical, play within themselves, and this series should be tight, but I still give the Bruins an edge. If I was picking the series, I would still say Bruins in 6 or 7. How confident am I? Not very, just based on the Islanders, because if you make one mistake, they could have 2 shots and you could have 47, and they'll score both of them. So I think it's gonna be a tight series, but I was impressed last night in terms of Pastrnak. Um, that line overall was very good, but Pastrnak himself has kind of hit his stride here in the postseason, and that's hugely important for the Boston Bruins. Otherwise, what more do you have than that line scoring? Or, you have Taylor Hall now, Krejci. I think they're more spread out. They're more depth there. They could get some help on the back end, hopefully with Kevin Miller coming back in maybe game 4 or 5 if it gets that. Um, but overall, I like where the Bruins are right now, and they just got to keep chugging along here because it's going to be a tight series. So, just because they won 5-2 doesn't mean anything. Those games change in a minute. So they got to come out and take care of home ice. I think that's the most important thing because playing in New York is going to be tough on the road, packed house. The Islanders will have last change there, so they'll make some adjustments, and just hugely important to take care of home ice. Get a pair of wins here on home ice. Go to New York and see what happens. So game 2 is tomorrow night, and that was a long ramble, but I like where the Bruins are at. That's kind of the basis of it. Um, Let me see if I got anything else. We could go for another hour here if Ez was on board, but just throwing it to myself, not as easy. So I think I stopped with the Bruins. Obviously, tune in the Celtics tonight, full crowd. That game should be phenomenal if the Celtics show up and play. Um, but yeah, about 50 minutes, an hour here. So overall, we hit on a number of things today, but if any questions, comments, send them to 360 Sports Show at gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter, follow us on social media. I'm going to end there unless anybody has anything else for me to mention, but I think that will be a wrap here for today. Full house at the Garden tonight, so go watch the Celtics and Nets and enjoy the rest of your Sunday, everybody. I will see you next week.